Hi, I'm going to be talking about the activity of the order system for November 4th, 2020, and just going to go through the activity and the analysis. So we have this many activity that was tripped by the system, and it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There was 10 trades that were identified. As you can see, one, two, one, two, one, two buys, and of course the rest were all sells. Kind of makes you wonder what happened during the day. You can see that the buys were actually spread out from the morning till the late afternoon. But in general, it looks like activities that were tripped were mostly sell activity. So we're just going to go to the trades and see what the trade activity price-wise was. You can see FB was trading well. It was up almost 10%. But it did move fairly, level. Basically, it jumped up in the morning and then stayed level. But as you can see, 12:45, it would have. Does not look like I'm seeing a complete day. I'm just going to refresh. Yeah, the Yahoo, the Yahoo page is not showing it 100% correctly. And yeah, Yahoo's not behaving properly. So why don't we just take a look at the actual charting of the actual trades themselves, as Yahoo currently right now does not seem to be presenting the charts properly on their site. So this would be FB, and as you can see, it was showing fairly aggressive movement. Volume was moving up for the most of the day. It did stabilize, obviously, in 2 points. Morning it jumped up, stabilized late morning, dropped a little bit mid-morning or mid-afternoon, midday, and then afterwards it jumped up again and stabilized, which MACD somewhat is duplicating too. But as you can see, the buy was tripped around this time, which MACD is showing that yes, it's above the signal, which trip to trip, and you can see DI was activated a little bit earlier than MACD, but then dropped. But the good thing is, right afterwards, midday or early afternoon, it came up. It came up at the end of the day. So DI was kind of like bouncing back and forth with respect to direction. And the end result is a Bollinger Band, somewhat is again, yes, showing the fact that it came up and then stabilized. And at the end of the day, it looked like it was recovering. And it did look, just from the aspects of morning activity, you can see the fact that it jumped up 10%, seemed to be a response to early morning trading, which shows it up almost 2.25%. So it did move again early morning. So it looks like that trade was somewhat positive because the fact is, the after fact is moving the direction it should be. So the next trade is BAX. And I know I don't usually mention the name of the company, but BAX is Baxter International, and they identified, yeah, again, the charts here are not displaying correctly on Yahoo Finance, but they're indicating a selling activity at 12:55. So let's just go take a look at the analysis. 12:55. You can see morning it was somewhat coming up a bit, and then midday it just dropped. And MACD is actually showing that much more concretely. It just dropped. And interesting thing is, no, DI also was showing dropped. But as you can see, DI is a very, I would say more complex indicator because it's indication of direction, and you can see direction for the most part can easily move back and forward during the daytime, which is what it did here. But you can see that it was going down most of the time, basically a negative push most of the day, and it was tripped again. And then you can see it did trip around this time. What was that? 12:55. It was tripping here. I mean, you can see it was actually had a drop early morning and then tripped around here, and by the end of the day it was down. So this is actually a valid selling point. So Baxter would have also been another trade that would have been positive at the end of the day. And Geo, which is the Geo group, and you can see they were down quite a bit yesterday, obviously. Again, we can't see for whatever reason. They're 5-day, for some reason their 1-day charts are not coming up correctly. Anyways, you can see it was down a good amount, and it opened today down, so you can see that the movement of it technically was moving in that direction. And just make sure I'm on the right chart. Yeah, I'm on the right chart. Okay, and again, same type of thing. Midday, it seemed to be moving somewhat, stable in the morning, then dropped, and then dropped again. So midday it dropped, stabilized, and at the end of the day it dropped again. So it looked like it was consistently moving down. MACD is showing the exact same thing. DI, as you can see, was showing that negative push was the majority of the day. And as you can see, the Bollinger Band also was the end of the day. So that would have been another positive operation that trade would have finished off being negative. Okay. The next trade is BEN, which is another short. Franklin Resources. It was down 1 3/4, so technically that's good. Any movement above 1% really is an indication that's fairly strong with respect to the movement itself, and this dropped close to 2% yesterday. And the charts, again, showing, yes, right around that time. Morning-wise, it looked like it was somewhat stable, even though volume was moving down. And early afternoon, that's when it dropped, and that's when it indicated. And you can see MACD was showing the same thing, even though MACD was showing a reversal at the end of the day. So that's the whole thing. And OBV somewhat is showing that too. So OBV, MACD was showing that at the end of the day it came back up. And Bollinger, DI was also showing it come back. So at the end of the day it came back, and Bollinger Band actually is showing the same thing. And 145, which showed it around here, but you can see at the end of the day it recovered, even though at the end of the day it was still down, obviously, the stock, so it still was negative, but the end result is that this would not have been a positive trade, obviously, that you would have had an open stock at the end of the day waiting for activity to reverse, but for whatever reason that stock came back at the end of the day. Excuse me. HPE, Hewlett Packard. Hewlett Packard down 1%. So just check to see what the activity is. As you can see, Hewlett Packard, it was just down the complete day. Volume was down the complete day. MACD looked like it was basically almost half and half. DI, most of the beginning of the day, late afternoon, it seemed like it had a bit of a bouncing back and forth, but it looked like DI was also showing it negative, and Bollinger Band, as you can see, was showing it negative too. So that's a stock that would have been also positive. Excuse me. And we'll check the next stock. COG, Cabot Oil and Gas, down a lot, 8%. Which is interesting. As you can see, the markets were showing somewhat positive move. Well, actually, I'm not sure if this is actually the markets don't look like they were showing completely on Yahoo. I think Yahoo's having a little bit of a problem today. Excuse me. But you can see that the markets themselves were generally up. It looks, at least from this graphing, but crude oil, for whatever reason, it was down, which kind of makes sense because of the virus, and that seems to be an impact on it. But as you can see, no, this was very negative also. MACD, it was showing negative movement for the most part, even though it was showing a little bit of positive mid-afternoon, but then it came back. And MACD, DI was showing very much negative movement, and ADX, which is the somewhat averaging of directional index, was actually showing very high. So the fact that DI was down, was showing that it was negative movement. The fact that ADX itself was showing fairly strong, values too, was showing that it was actually a fairly strong negative movement. Again, excuse me. As you can see, the Bollinger Band is a direct representation of that. So again, that would have been another positive trade. Let's go to the next stock, which is ENPH, which is a buying. And it was up 2.25% yesterday, which is good. And you can see early morning, it's up 5 and almost 5.25 roughly percent. So this stock looks to be very positive. Sorry, I seem to be off my stock. Pardon me while I indicate where the stock is occurring. That was a $48 one. 16. Interesting, I can't find the stock. $96. Yeah, okay, this looks like it's the EMPH values. 15. Yes, so that was a trade. Okay, so this is the charts for EMPH. As you can see, it was up quite a bit yesterday, and today morning activity, it's up quite a bit. OBV is showing very strongly that it was pretty much up the whole day. It did move sideways in the afternoon, but even at the end of the day, it was showing positive movement. This is interesting. MACD is actually showing negative activity during early afternoon. That's interesting. MACD is showing negative. But as you can see, again, DI is also showing negative during the beginning of the afternoon, but at the end of the day, it came back up. OBV, though, is showing very strong movements. So it's interesting that there was indication that it was reverting or reversing at the beginning of the afternoon, but it still stabilized and came back at the end of the day, which again the stocks were showing that they did, revert and come back at the end of the day. So overall, the charts were showing somewhat positive movement, even though MACD and DI were showing somewhat of a reversal during the beginning of the afternoon. It still was a positive result at the end of the day. As you can see, Bollinger Band is showing a positive movement at the end of the day. So that would have been another positive trade. Okay. Excuse me. PEG. Which is Public Service Enterprises Group, not down too much, so that would have been a question mark about how that would have reacted. But even though it wasn't down much, the charts themselves, at least from the point in time when it was started to accumulate, which was basically just the afternoon, so just the afternoon activity that we only have information for, was showing very negative. So this stock, basically dropped in the afternoon. Everything is showing that exact same result, and DI was very positive movement in a negative fashion. So DI minus was very positive. I'm trying to revert my name, but you can see the Bollinger Bands was showing it. Yeah, this stock was dropping. It was dropping strongly. So again, another positive trade that would have occurred from that. We'll look at the next stock. Yeah, okay, so that's it. And that's also another short sell. And this is LNC, Lincoln National Corporation. They were down, God, 3.75, 3.75 almost, percentage-wise. So that's fairly strongly negative movement. As you can see, the stock was pushing down quite a bit. MACD, for the most part, was pushing down also quite a bit. DI, again, also showing negative movements. So this one pretty much was right on the line that all analysis was showing that this stock was moving negative. And as you can see, the end result is, at the end of the day, it was negative. So, another positive trade. And take a look at the next stock, which is HBI. I think that's Hannes Brands Incorporated. showing 1.25% drop. And the analysis, excuse me. The morning it was okay. It was showing somewhat, stability, at least OBV wise. MACD was showing that it was actually early afternoon it started to show down. Like OBV was showing that it was fairly stable up until roughly 2 o'clock, and then started to come down. MACD was actually showing a bit more negative movement before that, and it was down for the most part the rest of the day. DI, again, roughly same type of thing, showing around the same time that MACD was showing a negative movement, and very strong negative movement on DI. And as you can see, Bollinger Band also showed that, yeah, in the morning time it was somewhat actually moving up and then stabilized and then dropped. So this would have been a positive trade also. So that just shows you the activity for the identified stock. There were 10 stocks identified. As you can see, trading on 9 of the 10 stocks would have shown positive outcomes. I personally traded on one of the stocks, and it did have a positive outcome. So that for me was good. But again, it showed you that if you traded on 9 or 10 stocks, by the end of the day you would have made money. So it was a very good day. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.